Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to help the channel grow and keep up to date with the latest videos. Hi and welcome to another video by me, FloJo. Today we're going to be looking at PowerApps, Canvas apps, and we're going to be looking at the Test Studio. We're going to be looking at an introduction for it and why you should be using it. So what is the Test Studio? Well, the Test Studio allows you to build end-to-end UI automated tests for your applications. It allows you to maintain the quality of your application by continually validating expected behaviors. So essentially you can write automated tests. Now I've highlighted end-to-end there. What does end-to-end mean? If you're someone that's not familiar with testing, then end-to-end is a testing technique that tests the entire software product from beginning to end to ensure the application flow behaves as expected. So how does this work with the Test Studio? How do we create tests that are automatically run for our Canvas app applications? Well, essentially you can write tests using the PowerApps expressions, or you can use a recorder to do like a point and click interaction to save those and automatically generate the steps. So you don't actually have to write it, you can record yourself doing it. Then you can play back these tests to validate the app functionality. So what does this look like? Well, on your screen now you can see what you will be seeing when you first open the Test Studio. And on the top left you can add steps, asserts and properties, but don't worry if you don't understand some of this terminology, we're going to be going over that momentarily. This is where you can record. You've got the record button there, so you can actually record each of your steps through your application to create your tests. Then you've got on your left hand side, you've got the tests, and you can see the display of the suites. You've then got test cases. Again, don't worry about terminology, we're going to be covering this, but that's where you're going to see your test case listed. And then on the main screen you're going to see your case there where you can actually start adding test steps. Now if you see on the left hand side there is the new step section. Well, if you select the suite you can see that the new step section changes to the new case section on the top right of your screen, and that is where you can add another test case. Then you've got your generic save, publish, play and copy link that you would have seen before, as well as you've got the plus the new suite. So we've talked a lot about suites, cases, asserts, steps. What do these mean? So let's look at the terminology. So the terminology for this, especially if you're not a tester, may be something you're not used to. So test steps are individual steps created to mimic a user or data input. So for example, click button, that would be a step. Check label, that would be another step. But test cases contain multiple steps to create a single test for validating. So the test could be enter first name, that's one step. Enter last name, that's another step. Click save button, that's a third step, and that would be one test case because the test is to simply enter the first and last name and press save. But then you have something called test suites. Now test suites are used to organize multiple test cases together. Essentially it's grouping multiple test cases. So we could have a test case that enters data and presses save and just validates that that data has been entered. Then we may have another one that goes to a screen and checks that there is a name on there. They may be around the same functionality, so we may want to group those test cases in one test suite. Then we have assertions, or also known as asserts. Now this is the validation part. It validates an expected result as a true or false value. You assert that the label contains FloJo because it's been changed when you've pressed save. So the assert contains flow Joe on the label would give back a true, so that you know that part of your test has passed. So now we're going to move on to actually opening up the test suite, but firstly we're going to look at the application we're going to be testing. Okay, so I'm on the PowerApps Studio. I've created an application and we're going to just have a look at this quickly. I'm not going to go into too much technical detail, but it's just so that we understand what we're testing. So I've got a new user screen. I've got a first name where I can enter my first name. I've got a last name where I can enter my last name, and I can press save. Now save will then pop up a label here that's currently hidden to say new user has been added. Now this isn't connected to a data service like Dataverse. It's just to display information just for the purpose of this demonstration. So let's actually take a look at it in action then. So I can write flow Joe and press save. And as you can see here, the user has been created. And then if I can click back into here, it will remove the label and I can start again just adding another user. So this is the application that we're going to be testing. So to actually start testing, on the left hand side you can see this little screwdriver over here and a spanner. If you open that, you can see we've got our advanced tools. We've got monitor and tests. If we click open tests, it's going to show this error, because if this is the first time you're doing this, you more than likely haven't enabled your formula level error management. So to be able to do this, if you click on go to app settings, then go on to upcoming features, click experimental, and then just select on for the formula level error management section. If you close that and then press open tests, this will then open our test studio and we can begin creating our tests. So there's several ways we can go about writing our tests. We can hit the record button. We can effectively use our application to record some steps, press done, and then all of the steps will appear here in our test case. Or we can write it manually. Now why would you go about writing it manually then? Well, initially you may want to hit record and record all of the steps so that you have your initial test case. But when you want to do more specific things, maybe such as verification, or you need to edit a test case in the future because you've changed your application, you're going to need to do those manually. So let's start there then with the manual approach. So the manual approach is the fundamental approach so that you understand how everything works. What we're going to do is we're going to go back into our application and look at what we're going to try to populate. And what we're going to try and populate is this first name input field. So if we open up the tree view, you can see that this element is called first name text input. So to actually populate anything with the test studio, we need to use a function called set property. So as I wrote set property there, you can see that it auto populates. It's got IntelliSense. So essentially you can click on set property and it will auto populate for you. You can open and close the parentheses, and then if you press and add two single quotations, this is where we're going to enter the element that we're going to be targeting. So I'm going to be targeting first name, and as soon as I start writing first, it auto grabs all of the elements within my application, so I can then just press the first name text input. And what we're going to then do is want to put the text section in. So as I'm writing text, again it auto populates. So we are going to be setting the property of the first name text input element, and we're going to be setting the text property of that, and now we put a comma and put the value that we want to enter. So in this instance I'm going to use quotation marks and write flow. So in here what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting the property of the first name text input text property to flow. So if we just click off of that, you can see that the name gets updated with all of the action information in there. But for best practices, what you should do is populate this to be as informative as possible, because then if your test case fails when you're running your tests, you'll know exactly what's gone wrong. So what I'll do here is put first name input box enters flow. And so then you can see that the step name is different and the action is there. Let's hit save, and that will save our test case. It's only got one step at the moment. Then if we hit play, you're going to get these this app version, because just like on PowerApps, when you make any changes, you need to publish them for the user to experience them. But just with the Test Studio, if you make any changes, you need to publish them before being able to run that specific version or the latest version of the test. So if we hit publish, then what's going to happen is we're going to automatically see our application on the right hand side and a list of test cases on the left hand side. Now this is going to give us an automated process. So as you can see here, our application is loaded. We've gone through the on test case start steps, the demo screen, the first name input box enters flow, so you can easily see what the name is here and it's easily understandable rather than the actual code. And you can see that it's got ticks here. Now if we look over the right hand side, it went really fast. It's entered flow into that field as if a user was going to do it. And then we've got the on test case complete steps done. Now we haven't actually got any steps in the on test case start or on test case complete. We've only got this one step that's running, which is the first name input box enters flow, and as you can see there, it has entered it. Okay, so what we've done then is we've actually set the property of the first name text input field to flow, and we've run our test. But how do you validate this? Okay, so to check this then, we need to get this element and assert that the text on this is flow. So we need to basically verify that the text on the first name text input element contains flow. How do you do this then? Well, if we write assert and then open the parentheses, you can see it says expression. It doesn't give you much information about what the expressions can be, but essentially we can just write first name text input and get the text. Now unlike the set property, you don't need to put single quotations around this because we just are grabbing this element now and we're grabbing the text, and then we can just do equals and then write flow. So if we just click off of that, again the name's going to change, but depending on your approach to this, you can write validation and then just first name input box contains flow. So then that's easy to understand that that step there is a validation step and you are checking to see if it works. So if we hit save now, we'll hit play, and then what we'll do is we'll see our screen on the right hand side. Now focus on the right hand side first. So our on test case is done, our flow's been entered, and now we're going through the validation step. And you can see here that we've got the tick on the validation step. So we've actually grabbed this element, we've grabbed the text that it contains, and then we've checked to see if that element contains flow. So obviously flow is in here, and then we've compared it to the flow that we've entered in our assert, and we said, is this the same? True has come back, it is the same. So then we've got a tick. Now what happens if the assert fails? Let's change Joe. Let's pretend that we're expecting the element of first name text to contain Joe rather than flow, but we are actually entering flow in our first step. So let's hit save, and then let's hit play and publish the changes again. Okay, so when this loads, focus on the screen version so that you can see the flow gets populated this time. So we've started on our test case and our flow has been populated into the name. Now if we go over to the left hand side, you can see that there is an error. So let's just walk through this from start to finish. We've got our on test case start, that's run. We've got our first name input box enters flow. We've done that and there's a tick and we can see that there. Then we've got the validation step. Now I always use the validation at the beginning because I find it easier and that's my naming convention, but you can choose to do whatever you wish. But as you can see here it says assert failed and we've got an X. So if we go down to the additional steps section, because our assert here was expecting Joe in the first name section, if we come down to here it says the test failed at step validation first name, it says in out, but it's supposed to be a input box contains flow, and it asserted the message assert failed because our check here, if we press done, our check here says that the first name input text should be Joe because we changed that. And let's just change this to input. And obviously you can see the place status over on the right hand side, and you can see that this step is the one that failed. So we can then go back, change that, and we can fix that easily. So this is how we do it manually. Let's now take a step into the recording section. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete each of these steps. So before we begin actually recording, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the area where we've got our suites and our cases. So the case that we're going to be doing is going to be creating a new user. So let's rename our case, create a new user. Then we can actually enter a description, enter first and last name, click save and create a new user. So then it just gives you an understanding, as well as if you're working with other individuals, they'll understand exactly what's happening in this case without having to look through all of the steps. Now the suite, you can do exactly the same. So we can change this to new user screen, for example, and test cases for the new user screen. So you're able to enter information about the suites as well as the cases to make it easier to understand. And on the left hand side you can see here, as I'm splitting it up by screen, I've got the new user screen, and if we created a new suite we'd be able to add another one, and then if we obviously had more screens we could add the screens, and then we can add more cases as well. So if you click on here on the suite you'll be able to click on add new case, but if you're not clicked on here and you're clicked on a case, you'll be able to then add steps, and then you can add an assert, a set property, select and trace step. Now we saw the set property when we was doing the manual as well as the assert, but we will see more of these in the future. Okay, so now we've got all of our screens set up for the new user screen as well as our case name. We can click on the view on the right hand side for this particular suite, and as we was going through the test runs earlier you saw on test case start, on test suite complete, and on test case complete. So what you can actually do here is you can put steps in that you want to occur before each test case has started, when each test case is complete, or when the entire suite has completed. So for example, if we during one of our test cases went to another screen and we wanted to make sure that we navigated back to the new user screen, we could add navigate to new user screen in our test case complete, so that after each test case we are back to where we started and we're always starting from the same position. Okay, so let's move on to the recording then. If we hit record, we're going to get the same type of layout that you saw when we did our run through of our tests. On the left hand side instead of showing our steps, it's going to show our recording mode, and when we click or do something on the application in this screen, it's going to appear here. So let's click on here on the first name, and you can see on the left hand side it's selected the screen, and then you've got the select first name text input. However, we're putting a name into here, so if I click it again, you're going to see it appear. Now it's going to track every single thing you do, and you don't want to obviously have select and then enter. You just want to enter the information, because it's an additional step you don't need. So when we finish this, we're going to delete this first step because we don't need it, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's just put flow into here, then I click onto last name. Now what you'll see on the left hand side is it will automatically change it if you're still in the same process of that step. So when I click save now, this select last name text input will change to set last name text input.text to Joe. And as you can see, it changed it there. I've clicked on the save button, and now I've got my user has been created. But I can't do anything here in terms of an assertion to check that the user has been created is being displayed. So what I'll do is I'll just click here, and it will add that selection there. Then if I click on done on the left hand corner, you will see that all of our steps have been created for us. Obviously the names of our steps are set to the actual way that Microsoft wants you to do it, but obviously you're more than welcome to go through and change these, but for now we're going to keep them as this. Now obviously I press select first name text input twice, so if you do make an accident like this, all you have to do is just click on it, press delete, and it will remove that particular step. So now what's going to happen is, in this case run, we're going to set the text box to flow, set the last name text box to Joe, click on the save button, and then we're doing select user added label, but we don't want to do that, we want to assert. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to assert. So as we've already got we selected the element, so we've already got the name of it, so we can just write user added label. Now we want to see that it's visible, so we can just do dot visible, and then we can say is true. What we're actually trying to do is essentially say, is this user added label visible? Because when we come into our application, we can see that it's not. And if we go into here and we go into visible, we've got a variable of submit, and if we come into here, we're setting submit to true once we press this save button. So once we press this save button, we're going to be checking that the visible value of variable submit is true, so that this is actually displayed. So we've done our assert there, so let's change this to assert user added label is visible. Okay, so let's save that. We've now got our two sets, we've got our select, and then we've got our verify. Let's hit play and then publish. So we're going to be expecting flow to be entered, Joe to be entered, then the save button to be pressed, and then the user label to be displayed, and then we're going to verify that that user label is displayed. So we've entered flow, we've entered Joe, we've now clicked on the save button, the user has been created, is displayed, and then we verified that the visible attribute of the user has been created. The property of that visibility is now set to true because the variable has been changed when this save has been added, and it is now displayed. So you can see that our test case has run, and you can see that the success has been applied here, and we know that we have got a create new user stage to assert that the user label is now visible. So that's how you can use the record section to easily make steps and then modify it, and this is why we looked at manually changing it beforehand so that we understand how it works. So going back to this then, we've got 4 separate sections. We can select something, we've got that here. We've got the set property where we are able to modify elements, and then we've got assert to verify. I'm not going to touch on trace due to the introduction of this video. So that is an introduction to the Test Studio with PowerApps, and as you can see, you can easily create and maintain test cases as well as suites for your applications, so as they inevitably grow bigger, you can maintain the quality over time to make sure nothing breaks, as well as if you start working with other users on an application, they can run your test sets so that they know they haven't broken anything while they are working on your application. Thanks for watching another video by me, Flo Joe. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button or select a video on your screen right now to continue learning more about the Power Platform.